Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to the World Championship Series Challenger Day 2. We just finished up our first best of 5. It was quite an explosive one, Lycan.
It was extremely exciting. I'm glad it went the way it did. We went to all 5 games.
Yeah, we saw Kane defeat Huck 3-2, proving that he is, at least today, the better Canadian and perhaps the better caster player, as it were. And we have a couple more series, of course, to bring you guys. We have 3 more best of 5s. 2 Terran versus Zergs remain, and then a Terran versus a Protoss. So all you Terrans, you will get your fix tonight as we feature Kane. Kane, who just defeated Huck, but then Pult against Jon Snow, Violet against QXC, and Xenocider versus Hitman. As you guys can see, not a lot of these players really contending for WCS points. Pult has pretty much locked himself in, barring some sort of weird, unspeakable madness happening at the end of the year. He would need to lose basically every single game, and a bunch of people that are very close would have to start winning GSLs, and that would be quite crazy.
Yeah, he's in 8th position. I believe the closest North American is Bunny, who's in 16th position for WCS. Yeah.
So at this point, it's basically guts and glory for everyone left. And our next series is this is one of those ones where it's like, you know, I really don't know how exactly to approach this, because Jon Snow has been an up-and-coming NA player for quite some time. I've seen him quite a bit. I've had the pleasure of getting wrecked by him on ladder, but Pult is Pult. Pult has won championship titles in North America, in Europe, and Korea. This is a bit of a one-sided match. It's going to be really tough for Jon Snow.
Yeah, Jon Snow, kind of a comeback kid. Season 3, 2013 was the last time he was in WCS, and so it's going to be interesting to see what he can do. Maybe this is the time. Maybe he's figured something out, and he's on the top of his game.
And then you have Pult, who's never not been in WCS, and who has several titles as champion of WCS America, who has a WCS title this year. A pretty clear favorite. It's going to be, I mean, I just want to see Jon Snow do some craziness, because the maps that we have are also pretty crazy. We're starting this series on Moonlight Madness. I'd like to think it was Jon Snow's choice to try to mix things up in a really weird way.
Yeah, at the same time, I like to think it was Pult who's going to channel some flash, and we're going to see some good drop play with those tanks.
Yeah, I don't know what to expect, honestly, because this is a pretty interesting match, to say the least. In the bottom left position, we are loaded into Moonlight Madness. We have the blue Terran player. He is CM Storm's Pult.
And in the top right, he's definitely the underdog. It is the red Zerg, Jon Snow.
Jon Snow, also representing Flipside Tactics. They're representing North America alongside Puck and Bales. Bales, whom we saw yesterday, fortunately drop out to Masa in a pretty tough Protoss versus Terran series. But Moonlight Madness, there's a lot of openings to your back area. You have rocks in your main that lead out to what could be your natural, what could be your third. But even that area has 2 more pathways that are also accessible by giant rocks.
Yeah, this is a place where Zerg can do a lot of aggression, attack from a lot of different angles. And I'm curious to see which expansion he decides to take, or if he decides to knock down some of those rocks in the back.
Yeah, he has, I mean, both sides have a lot of options in that regard, because you can always try to just close off one side or build a depot by the big rocks and just, you know, at least be aware if your opponent tries to do something aggressive. All in all, there's still a lot of other high ground areas in this map, a lot of choke points. Widow Mines will still be very strong. Jon Snow's going to take this outer base to kick things off. And, I mean, Jon Snow competes in a lot of online North American tournaments and cups and whatnot. I think he's, like, won at least maybe one title in, like, Fear Dragon's Breaking Out.
I believe so.
From North America. But, you know, is nice as, you know, the success he's had in the North American scene goes, most of those are sequestered North American tournaments. He, as far as to my knowledge goes, does not have any big results against Korean players like Pult, and that's something that you kind of need if you want to make it out into Premier for WCS.
Well, if we talk about Terrans, we in Copa America, he almost knocked Major out. I believe it was a very close series between the two, and I know that he likes Roach Hydra in his ZBT. So that'll be interesting to see, especially that's not a popular style to go against, especially with, you know, siege tanks. Good unit, right?
Yeah, and considering that I think this map actually really favors tank-based play, or just, you know, any sort of choke point type style, which makes it much more tough to play as Zerg against Terran. You know, there's still a lot of things that make me like Terran a lot on this map. But perhaps we see some really good Mutalisk play is also a good option, I think, just because of how much airspace there is. There's a ton of air behind the main. If you can get a good Muta count going, it'll also help because I think drops will be really good on this map too if you choose to play something like Roach Hydra. Now, Bolt has opened up with just one quick Reaper who wants to go out, scout, see what's going on. Jon Snow, though, if he plays a very straight-up game like Semper did against Jaedong, you know, I'll give him credit, but I don't know if that's the best way to play against someone who's, you know, a championship tier player like Bolt.
Absolutely. Pretty good defense. He doesn't let a drone go down to the Reaper. As we move forward to the game, though, I wonder if he will decide to change up strategies as we go game to game to game. In his Season 3 2013 WCS group, he Roach, Zergling, Baneling all in Select, Revival, and Tasia. Granted, he got knocked out and didn't win against Tasia, but he seems to be, at least in the past, a guy that didn't like to deviate strategies. So I'm wondering if he's going to come into this with a little more malleable idea about how he's going to play.
Yeah, malleable is definitely a good way to put it. When you're up against someone like this, you need to be able to tweak your styles, make changes where necessary, and especially against a player that's just so ridiculously favored against you, bust out something that you don't necessarily see every single game that maybe Polt won't have as much experience against. Because like we said, you know, Semper didn't really mix it up at all. Aside from, you know, the last game before he you know, got knocked out by Jaedong yesterday, and I would say that's probably a very similar, you know, level when we look at prestige between players as far as who really should win this best of 5.
Yeah, Polt being the favored player, he has a lot more options because he's going to be comfortable in a lot more different play styles. So Jon Snow is definitely going to be ready to adapt and overcome to those situations. He's got the Zerglings on the map, just getting a little bit of vision, keeping good presence. There, the Hellions are going to try to get a tumor.
Oh, he forces the cancel on the tumor spreading, and actually one of the Hellions gets picked off. That's a pretty nice start here for Jon Snow. Polt is known for mostly bio-based styles. He's not really a mecher to any degree, but even opening up with this quick Banshee that he canceled it. Okay, so he had a Banshee on the way. I was going to say...
He saw the lair, and I think he thought, okay, if this is going to be fast Muta, I don't want to have that Banshee out.
Yeah, that's actually quite smart of Polt, because I was going to say, like, that Banshee shows a lot of respect to his enemy, and he's actually going to go straight into an armory now, too.
Yeah, so maybe we're going to see a Marine Hellion push, or a
cancel stim?
Marine Hellbat push.
I thought he had stim on the way. That's pretty weird.
He did have stim on the way.
I guess to afford everything, he was like, well, I don't need that upgrade. My push is going to be much bigger focus for this game.
Yeah, so he's going to push probably with some unstimmed and unstimmed Marines, Hellbats, a couple medevacs, and there's a Baneling nest on the way, which is going to be really good for handling that.
And he does need to get Banelings out on the map. That's really, really important. In fact, he only has 6 lings, so he can't make a crazy number of Banelings. And if he starts that Spire, that's also a lot of gas that he cannot put into Banelings either. Jon Snow needs to be very careful. This is one of those types of pushes that can kill a Zerg very fast. Baneling Nest isn't even done. He can't even start building Banelings yet.
And he does actually have the Spire on the way, too, hoping to shut down some of these Hellions. But I don't know if he's aware of what's getting ready to push. There are 6 Hellbats. 7 Hellbats, Reaper, and then a few Marines along with the medevacs going to do great for healing. These Queens aren't going to do anything against the Hellbats. There are no Banelings to defend, and I think this is not going to be a great position for Jon Snow. He's losing 2 Queens. Well, 3 Queens go down. Transfusions aren't enough.
I mean, some Banelings are going to finish up. He does knock down a couple of the Hellbats and trying to do some cute medevac micro, but the rest of the Banelings come in, and actually Jon Snow manages to defend this push of Polt without any significant losses. He didn't lose any drones. He lost just 1 Queen and a handful of lings. That's actually pretty impressive, to be honest.
Yeah, definitely, especially when you're up against a player like Polt. Polt on the back foot. He didn't plan for that to be an all-in. That was just some early aggression. Maybe win the game. Maybe do a lot of drone damage.
Honestly, though, like, and I feel like it's actually pretty terrible opening as far as result-wise for Polt, because his 3rd command center is just so absurdly late. Like, Jon Snow's taking a late 3rd too, which kind of helps equalize it. But other Mutalisks are going to be coming out, and this is where Polt's going to have a bit of a rougher time securing that 3rd, since the Mutas will have so much space to bounce around. And look at this, Jon Snow actually going for a big counter. There's no bunker here. This is a pretty ballsy play, but it could score some big damage right now.
Yeah, absolutely. Those Marines up in the top of the base, they're not going to be there to defend or focus down the Banelings. If he attacks now, this is going to be a great position. He's going to see that with the medevac that there is something coming. He's going to be able to drop that Hellbat down, but the Banelings are going to be there, bust way through, but there really isn't a lot to do a follow-on. This Baneling might get a few kills.
Yeah, it softens up some of those SCVs for the Lynx, try to get a couple of finishing blows off him, and that's not too bad. I mean, 3 kills. I definitely seem to be hoping for more, but also killed a couple of the supply depots, so he's prevented Polt from actually building any units for the next 30 seconds, unless he uses a supply drop. But The command center actually finishing will help soften that blow a little bit. And now the Mutalisks come into play. Without the third base being in position for Pult, Jon Snow just needs to crank out drones, crank out mutas, and as long as he doesn't throw mutas away, I still like this position.
Yeah, he has a small number of mutas. He is going to be able to do something like maybe deny some gas glaive worms, might be able to get a kill or two, but here comes the Marines. They're going to push these mutas out, and there are missile turrets.
Two mutas getting picked off. Not good for Jon Snow.
No. That third base is now finishing up, and Pult is kind of into the swing of his production. Stim is done. He has the Marines, he has medevacs, and he's still actually building Vikings too, which again, as we've talked about before, when you have Marines softening up those mutas, those Vikings actually do quite a bit of damage.
Yeah, and of course the Viking will always be able to deny overlords that are out on the map if those Mutalisks are not in position to defend. And to be fair, Jon Snow hasn't really placed many overlords out on the map, so he's not going to lose too much to that. But he's built so many units, and that third base has been saturated so slowly that this is still a tough spot for Jon Snow because he didn't have the economy that he really would have wanted to stop big Terran pushes that would be coming across the map. And now his creep spread is going to get shut down too. All of his active tumors, I think, are in range of this scan.
Right, now there's still some health on these medevacs. They do have some energy to go, but there are banelings, and the banelings do not have speed yet. That is still 75% from finishing.
Yeah, that not having baneling speed is actually a really big deal here. The mutas are going to try to keep chasing. I like that Jon Snow's actually taking such aggressive posturing, though. It hasn't completely paid off just yet when we talk about stuff like the big push that he made onto the natural expansion of Pult. But he is looking. He's trying to create these opportunities, and I'm actually worried because some of those banelings look like they might detonate on those rocks.
Yeah. They're dancing behind. Yeah, you don't want to see him get a chance to move through, but they do not. He just weakens the rocks a little bit. I guess that's an option for later. Pulls back with the Mutalisk. He is going for a drop, though. This is going to get spotted, and hopefully the Mutas are going to be able to get back and shut it down.
Those two medevacs flew by the tower. Jon Snow had a Zergling on the watchtower, so he was able to see those medevacs coming, and now he can respond in kind, go home and defend, and at the same time try to counter.
At the front. Yeah, he's going to try to counter. He's going to bust again. This is going to supply block Pult. And those Banelings are going to get in and get a few more SCV kills.
Yeah, Jon Snow's actually making a lot happen in this game. I'm really impressed. He's, oftentimes when we see non-Koreans play against Koreans, usually the weakness of the non-Koreans that they just play a lot more passively. But Jon Snow keeps looking for these opportunities to trade blows here and there. And, the biggest thing, though, that's really going to come to hurt Jon Snow is this style of having so many units on the map is great, but it comes at the cost of upgrades. Jon Snow is only just now getting evolution chambers. Pult's 2-2 is about a minute away from finishing. You can be down one set of upgrades when you're playing this style because you have so many more units. But if Pult has 2-2 against 0-0 Lings and Mutas,
that disparity of army just isn't able to do anything.
Yeah, that's pretty much like a almost unlosable position for Terran. You need so few Marines to actually handle Lings and Banelings. It's kind of silly.
I think Jon Snow in this position should definitely take advantage of that exposed third, kill some of those rocks, maybe do some multi-pronged attack, another bust at the front, while at the same time maybe sending Mutalisks to the back.
Yeah, this is a really, really tricky spot to be in because these Marines are going to trade so well against the
but a full medevac.
Yeah, this could actually be a really big moment. He needs to get his forces underneath those medevacs. Okay, gets one full one. That's not bad. Actually, the Zerglings managed to get through. The depot was not lowered. Some Widow Mines are going to burrow. This is really, really big. Okay, actually gets through the Widow Mines. There's still a lot of Banelings left. Jon Snow needs to make this army composition work right here, right now.
Yeah, those Banelings, good splits from Pult. There's still a lot of Zerglings, a lot of Mutalisks, and they're just going to try to barrel forward. Mutalisks trying to take hits, but it's not enough. That Pult bio upgrade is coming into effect. The +2/+2. Really showing how much it's worth.
Yeah, this right here was everything that Jon Snow needed, and I don't think it was enough. That Thor is going to be out. Now we have 2-2 bio. Right there was where Jon Snow basically needed to win this game because he's only now starting his 1-1. Pult can start 3 upgrades whenever he has the money. And with 8 Marines coming out at a time and that third base secured, Jon Snow only has 3 bases himself, and he's behind on supply with inferior upgrades.
Yeah, so despite seeing a lot of good engagements from Jon Snow, he just hasn't taken the right engagements. He hasn't made the right moves to compensate for the way that this game has been going.
I do like that he went for this style, though. We saw Kane use this exact same style, even on a super Terran-favored map like Merry-Go-Round, in order to win when he did defeat Pult and when he qualified for WCS at the beginning of the year. Unfortunately for him, it hasn't worked out quite as well.
Nope, not at all. Pult is getting ready to get aggressive. He has Widow Mines, he has a Thor, he has Marines and Marauders and Medevacs all pushing forward. I think he's getting ready to camp at the edge of the creep and just start parade pushing.
Yeah, that's all you really need to do as Terran in this position. Just continue to push forward, get into a spot where you can just suffocate the Zerg because that 1-1 upgrades are still so far away. Pult has 3-3 on the way. Both upgrades now coming in. His +1 vehicle plating is going to be done soon. And that just makes that Thor super tanky as well.
Yeah, absolutely. You get those moments, right, where you get the Zerg army down, you're taking an advantage over the army supply. It's 65 army supply for Jon Snow to 97 for Polt right now. He's not worried about getting overwhelmed by Zerglings or getting pulled apart by a big mass of mutas, right? He has the kind of army that really, with a good split, he could just take a face-on engagement.
Yeah, and I think that's what he's got to be looking to do, really. You just have the Marauders go up front with the Thors, soak up a bunch of damage, and just pull the Marines back. Let the mines do the dirty work. Your forces are so much better upgraded than your opponent that losing a straight-up fight is nigh impossible. Especially when you're ahead on supply like this. Polt is taking this really slowly because he recognizes that there are some Zerg players who will go for basically like epic type of base trade styles. They'll try to force you into it right as you're trying to make that push. And Polt really wants to, he actually wants to fight that army head on.
Yeah, showing a little bit of respect for Jon Snow, not trying to just, barrel forward and take whatever he can. So he's playing it safe. He's poking forward, scanning, clearing creep, doing what he can to just make sure that he is going to secure a first win for the series.
Yeah, and that's the most important thing that he can do. Some of these Banelings are going to try to come down, actually get a couple decent hits on these Marines. No reaction, actually, from Polt. He's like, well, I'll just build more Marines. It's okay.
Yeah, he does have a rip-roaring economy. 3 bases up and running, constant Marine Marauder production. And 4th base is now on the way. The 3-3 is getting close to finishing for Polt, and that's just going to really clinch it. 2-2 is only just now starting for Jon Snow.
Yeah, Polt is moving very, very slowly to try to take an end to this, but like you said, very meticulous. He doesn't want to risk it, and now Jon Snow's going to try to come down and knock him off of this 4th base. This is where things get really rough. The Mutas take some big hits from those Thors. There's still Marines behind. Even though Jon Snow has his 1-1 upgrades at last, I'm not sure if he can actually shut down all this army with more reinforcements coming across for Polt.
No, a lot of this Banelings splashed into the Thors and Marauders. Yeah. Widowmine's help. GG is called, and Jon Snow loses to Polt in Game 1.
Yeah, Polt taking Game 1. Not crazy surprising there. He had the +3 attack at the end as well, so he was still up 2 whole upgrades, and that's, for anyone wondering, when it comes to Marines versus Zerglings, each upgrade difference like that is a whole volley less it takes to kill them. So it is a huge deal for Polt to be able to knock those Lings out that easily. But with that being said, Jon Snow comes in as the underdog, opens up, guns blazing, very aggressive strategy, mass Lingbane Muta, no upgrades at all. That's like, I like the idea of that. It's not like an all-in off of like 2 or so bases. It's more like a 3-base all-in type style. But, if he studied Polt, Polt's lost to that before to non-Koreans.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that the biggest killer of a lot of Zergs against Terran is that upgrade disparity. If you don't take advantage of the amount of units you've created, because that's what Zergs can do, they can pump out all those units. If you don't take advantage of that, especially against a player like Polt, you're not going to go anywhere with it.
Yeah, that's something that really needs to be kept in mind, because Jon Snow, moving forward, like that's an open map, a lot of different alleyways, but the rocks didn't really come into play as much. He wasn't able to get the big counterattacks. They were mostly on the natural, which was just the front. But the next map is a lot more standard, a lot more straight up. We're going to play on Coda, 2 players still, but no wonky openings to your natural, no backdoor rocks in your main base. Your 3rd base only has 1 opening on, outside of, your natural area, I guess. But there's no weird stuff. This is a much more straight up map, and I think that's going to make things a lot easier for Polt, since there won't be as much trickery available for Jon Snow to use.
Yeah, on the last map, I would have really liked to have seen Jon Snow take advantage of the rocks, take advantage of the positioning. He had the bus, right? If he had been a little more on top of his multitasking, sending those mutas, maybe a little ling run by on the other side with the broken rocks, I think that really could have helped equalize and take advantage of that army advantage.
Yeah, I think that's the best thing that you can do, because some of those Baneling hits were quite good, but he wasn't able to capitalize on getting through the wall. He wasn't able to, and I would consider our Zerg player here an expert on things that have to do with big walls. He is Team Flipside's Jon Snow.
That was a dank Game of Thrones reference. And then on the top left, playing for CM Storm, it is the Terran, Polt.
And all Terrans are experts at walls, so
yeah, it's
one thing that we're good at. Protoss players, like they're kind of good with walls, but they always have to they actually need to have someone on the watch, whereas we actually, our walls just kind of watch themselves.
Well, if Jon Snow knows about walls, then Jon Snow does know something.
Yeah. Well, in that case, he still wasn't able to capitalize on it, unfortunately. So, it's a rough spot to be in, right? Because as good as Jon Snow is, as much as the people who have been following his play know. As far as his skill, he's still not someone that has big cash money results. He's still not someone that is favored in this matchup to any degree. This would be a monumental victory for him if he was able to take down Polt, who, was only eliminated by another Korean last season, basically, and it's so tough when you're coming into these tournaments and you just find yourself endlessly getting wrecked. How do you look at someone like, oh, Hydra beats Pult? It's like, well, yeah, let's just play like Hydra. Just do that, because you can just tell someone to do that, right?
I think that's what happens to everyone. You watch StarCraft, you watch a big tournament, and you're like, I'm going to go home and play like that player. And
yeah, and I heard you lost a ladder game the other day. Why don't you play like Maru? I don't understand.
Well, Maru lost today.
Well, I mean, still, I think even Maru losing would still win your ladder games.
Yeah, probably. So do you think Pult is one to go for a lot of Reaper aggression, up past 1 Reaper, 2 Reaper?
I wouldn't mind it, honestly. Most of my discussions with other Terran players, mostly European pros, they all agree that you either want to open with like 1 or 3. Some players will open with 2 and then get a 3rd one later on, like Bunny. The meta for TVZ has just been really stable, honestly. Like Terran versus Zerg has not really had any changes at all. The only one you could argue is that the Swarm Host change mixed things up a bit. But, the way that Terran works, with the way that we build walls and depot walls and planetaries on forts, you're never really worried about what map you're playing on versus Zerg. So I think it should just be pretty straight up. I guess as far as Reaper count goes, Pult just doesn't want to make a big commitment. He doesn't want to make a big investment because he's worried that, he won't get anything done with it.
Yeah, so he has the 1 Reaper. He went right into a reactor after that. He's going to soften up some of these drones, maybe get a kill. Jon Snow last game, though, didn't allow that to happen. And it seems... Oh, man, that was close. That was 1 hit away. He does build the reactor, the extractor, and the Lings are going to chase away this. On the other side of the base, though, we do see the factory coming down, so he is going to go into Hellions, just like last game.
Yeah, very standard fallout for Terran. I mean, any Terran that opens up without Hellions is, in my opinion, pretty crazy. I guess Maru kind of fits that bill, since he would usually just open up with 2 barracks on your side of the map, but...
Every game.
Almost, just about. But so far... Nothing really insane. Jon Snow, like these are the scenarios where if you're playing like North American ladder, you'd be like worried, okay, well now if you're Pult, if you don't want to die to something early on, this is where that Reaper is really worried, because you don't want to see a Roach Swarm and then all of a sudden be like, oh, okay, well a Hellion follow-up isn't going to do anything, right? So Pult still only has 1 gas, by the way, in that main base, which means this could be another one of those Marine Hellion type plays where he squeezes out a slightly later armory. And that wouldn't surprise me at all. It's still a very strong way to play, especially if Jon Snow doesn't open up with the Baneling Nest in time.
Yeah, with the current meta, we don't see those Marauder Hellbat pushes that we were seeing at the end of last year. We don't see those really too much anymore, but I think that had Pult tried something like that in the previous game, especially with what little Jon Snow had, that could have been a good option, and maybe we might see something like that this game.
Maybe Pult has been one of those guys to do those big barracks pushes off of 2 command centers, but usually they just put you really far behind. And Pult is not a guy that is generally shy to those strategies, but it seems like he's going to do something aggressive this game anyway. Like the way that he set himself up, he has that fast starport. You haven't actually seen him build anything out of it yet.
Nope, still continuing the Hellion production. 2 more are on the way. He is going to swap the starport.
So he thought about opening Banshee again. He wanted to confirm whether he was going versus Roaches or Banelings, and I think that's really smart. Like, if your opponent is going Roach Bane in any capacity, you want Banshees. Those units cannot shoot up. There is no catapult upgrade to launch your Banelings into the air. This is not the campaign. Actually, even though the Banelings could jump in the campaign, they still couldn't hit air units.
Can you imagine how terrifying that would be as a Terran?
Oh, that'd be awful. That'd be horrific.
Yeah, so Pult posturing outside of Jon Snow's base, just showing, hey, I've got a force, I'm starting to build some things. Without even attacking, this is going to force Jon Snow to react. He's going to think, all right, I got to be able to handle this. What could be coming? So he's going to try to scout. He's going to maybe build a few more units. We just saw 6 more Zerglings pop. So it does put Jon Snow in a position where he has to be concerned. And we do see a medevac moving out with some Marines and some Hellions.
Yeah, and Jon Snow behind this, he's just he's battening down the hatches, right? With a Spore Crawler, he has the Baneling Nest finishing just in time, and all of these are the things that he needs to secure a nice position. But Pult can also think about this in a different light and just basically tell himself, I want to delay this 3rd base as much as I can. I don't need to make a big Hellbat push because I know my opponent's stuck on 2 bases for a long time. This drop with the Marines in the main base, the sole purpose of this is to pull all of the Queens up, and Jon Snow needs to be very careful with how he watches this because, yeah, these Hellions are going to run by at the same time.
Yeah, and those Banelings are slow Banelings, so they can get taken out pretty quickly, especially with all those Hellions. Those Queens got pulled up just like you'd say, and now he's trying to go for a run-by, taking down 2 drones. These drones are just lining up, getting ready to be roasted by the Hellions.
Yeah, this is exactly what Polt was looking to do. Just distract and create opportunities, create space for these Hellions to move through by distracting them with that drop inside the main. Still losing drone after drone. 14 picked off, 16 so far in this fight.
Oh man, Jon Snow is just out of drones. He just lost 16 total. I mean, this is an incredible position for Polt, a terrible position for Jon Snow. He's got a Spire that's just about to finish. What is he going to do with that with absolutely no economy?
Yeah, I mean, he actually has more gas than minerals, and that's a very rare position to be in when you're a Zerg who's rushing up for Mutalisk. You usually need every drop of gas possible. He's going to have a hard time spending that gas since he still has to deal with the potential for Polt to just push with Marines very soon. He's already got medevacs on the way and 4 Marines at a time with Stim about to finish. I think Polt could actually just push across the map as soon as these medevacs finish and really become a big, big pain in Jon Snow's side.
Yep, but he's not rushing. He's building a third. He's just saying, okay, look, I'm going to have missile turrets for defense. These Lings do get to come in, but they wouldn't really get anything done with the Marines and the Hellions waiting. So he's going to build the turrets. He's going to be safe. He's not going to be worried about getting pulled back to his base, right? So Polt is in an incredible position. He's just not rushing the win. He's taking it easy.
Yeah, I think that Polt can, if he wants to, just secure the third base, then get ready and push out, you know, with combat shields. His third command center was late, but Jon Snow still doesn't even have a third hatch started, so Polt is still, by and large, in a great position economically. He has upgrades on the way. He has all the infrastructure and tech that he needs to take this to the mid-late game. Just needs to plant that third command center down and just start marching across the map.
Yeah, I wonder what's going through Jon Snow's head. It's a 51 to 39 worker disparity between him and Polt. The army supply in favor of Polt as well. He's going to try to deny some gas. Might get, you know, a few SCV kills from the Glaive Worm, but here are these Marines. They're going to clean it up just fine.
Yeah, now Polt's getting ready to attack. This is pretty much what I was just telling you, like, and there's not a whole lot he can do. There's some Banelings on the way, but with this many Hellions, with this many Marines, like, Polt would basically have to just clump all his units up together and command them into the Banelings for Jon Snow to clean up this army.
Yeah, Banelings, Queens holding back, trying to not go forward. Polt denying the creep, continuing to scan, get rid of those tumors, and it puts him in a great position. You do have the armory on the way, so Polt continuing to pump out the upgrades.
And I really like that Polt pulled back. He wants to focus on securing this third base because that is the most important thing he could do. The best way for Jon Snow to come back in this game is to catch Polt overextending, deny his third base for longer than Polt wants, and then Polt loses his whole army, looks back home, and he's like, oh wait, my third isn't planted yet. There's like creep or something. No. Polt's not going to let that happen. This is the ideal way for him to play out this scenario because it allows him to secure his economy while continuing to deny and pressure the economy of Jon Snow.
Yeah, so he's bringing Widow Mines too. He's transitioning into that big splash damage to handle the Banelings and the Zerglings.
Yep, so Jon Snow's continuing to put out drones. He sees these Marines, but there's not really a whole lot he can do. He doesn't have that many Mutalisks. He's getting +1 attack, but his Baneling speed isn't ready yet either.
Nope.
Like, I'm really not sure what he's supposed to do.
No, he does have an Evolution Chamber. It's not doing anything for the upgrades. Now it is. He just starts 1-1, and the Flyer upgrade is going as well.
Yeah, this is a really, really difficult position to be in. The Mutalisks are trying to make something happen, trying to open up a door, but there we go. The armory is ready, so now we have Hellbats that are going to push up front. They'll soak up Banelings. They'll clean up any number of Lings, especially if Polt's able to spread them properly against those Banelings.
Yeah, no, with this reserve force in the back, the Widow Mines and all this, Polt has enough to take this engagement. It takes a really good engagement, and this game is going to be secured, taking our Terran player up 2-0.
Yep, it's a very dicey spot to be in for Jon Snow. As Polt steps forward, we see the Banelings immediately detonate on the Hellbats. All the Marines are still in play. And even if Polt needs to lift up and pull back, all the Widow Mines are so far away that it's not possible for Jon Snow to bait out the mine shots anyway. These mines are purely for like an insurance policy if Polt ever needs to just back off.
Yep, Jon Snow getting kind of close to those Widow Mines. But yeah, as you were saying, those mines where they are, you can pull up into the medevacs, boost back, and if the Mutas try to chase, boom, 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 they're going to be done.
And so right now, he's just going to keep moving forward, keep trying to apply his pressure and just, you know, rally up his siege. I mean, Polt is actually just, he's playing this so cautiously. Like, you can really tell he's like, you know what, I don't want to have to play more than 3 maps in this series. I'm not going to take any big risks. I'm going to push forward very slowly, meticulously, and guarantee myself victory.
Yeah, absolutely. Thor production is also going down. Widow Mines slowly creeping forward, keeping a nice spread on them so they don't get knocked out all at once by the Banelings.
Yeah, and everything in this game right now is going phenomenally for Polt. As it clears up the creep, he can keep pushing forward.
Yeah, I will say this, Jon Snow is not falling apart, right? Yeah, he's taking some unfavorable engagements, but he's still trucking forward.
I mean, there's not a whole lot he can do, though, to be fair. Like, Jon Snow right now is just, he's hoping for Polt to overextend. He really needs Polt to step onto creep with all his Marines clumped up and then, you know, just, you know, look away for a second, basically, at this point, because Polt just has such an overwhelming army supply lead, the upgrade advantage. everything. And now Jon Snow tries to go for a big surround. He's going to try to finally take this army out, but there's just too many Marines. Like, he doesn't have enough banelings to clean this up.
Absolutely. 98 to 37 army supply. This is just not a fight that Jon Snow can do anything about. I don't think any amount of good baneling hits are going to be what can equalize this game for Jon Snow.
Maybe some miracle burrow banelings, but Pult still scanned as he advanced forward. He's going to clean up this third base, and with this, I think we should see a 2-0 so far in this series for Pult. Jon Snow, there's nothing he can do in this game. It's over.
Yep, the workers are just going to go down one by one. 11 have dropped already. GG is called, and Pult takes a 2-0 lead in this best of 5.
And Pult comes in as the favorite, the overwhelming favorite of any of these players in Challenger, actually, with the massive, string of victories that he's had in WCS so far this year, taking down really big players, defeating the likes of Hydra in the Season 1 finals. Like, he's got a TVZ reputation. He's got TVP reputation. Maybe Terrans are a weak point for him, but he's the only Korean Terran currently competing, in the North American side of things, at least for the WCS, and he's had the fortune of having a bit of better results for his 4GG lately. So Pult finds himself a very difficult player to actually take down, and for Jon Snow, not a fun draw. Pult had the first pick amongst a lot of the NA players, and he picked Jon Snow for a reason.
Yeah, absolutely. As you were saying, TVT Pult, the only reason he doesn't like it, he said, is because it's volatile, right? He can't go into it with a plan and say, okay, this is how X, Y, and Z is going to go. But when you come into ZVT, TVZ, he can look at it and he can say, this is how we're going to play the game. And Terran, especially against the Zerg, can drive the tempo of the game, and that's exactly what Pult did.
Yeah, Terran versus Zerg is the least complicated matchup in the game. TVZ pretty much 100% comes down to you being able to build more stuff than your opponent. There's very little room for trickery. Terran has a lot of options to deal with anything Zerg can throw at them. Zerg has a lot of options to deal with anything Terran can throw at them. This basically forces the player that's better mechanically to win, and Pult is not known for having poor mechanics in StarCraft 2. So the next map, though, maybe Jon Snow busts something out weird. It's going to be on Dash and Terminal. I think this is the first Dash and Terminal game we're going to see this week. This is actually probably the only game we could end up seeing. Maybe Violet QXC. Maybe the vetoes got weird there. QXC and Violet are pretty weird people, so who knows?
But we're going to see Terran and Zerg on this map. It's a base where we are starting to see people float to the gold. It's taken that, throwback to the other maps that have allowed players to do that.
Would Pult do that?
Would Pult do that?
I think even just 2Rex Reaper from your main is really strong in this map. There's a lot of stuff that you can do based on... We'll tell you guys a little bit more about the map as we get into it. The Dash and Terminal, to say the least, if you remember Scrap Station in the old days, has a very similar layout as far as air rush distance, and I guess with the way that it's laid out now, probably easier for things like Reapers to get across too.
True, but there are also a lot of avenues of approach for the Zerg player, a lot of ways that you can take advantage of where your Terran base is.
Yeah, that's true. The Natural has multiple points of entry as well.
Yeah, a little bit of rocks to play with. There are a lot of rocks in this season's map pool.
Yeah, and it basically we're like, we wanted to see what the new map pool would be like for Season 3 WCS, and the response was, can you smell what our rocks are cooking, basically, because there are lots of them. Even on this map, several, as you just mentioned, in the Natural even. So we're loading into game number 3. Jon Snow's last chance. He has to win the next 3 games in a row if he wants to advance to Premier. I guess a Titan like Pult, I don't see it happening, but maybe it's time for a miracle.
Yeah, this is definitely his last chance to make something happen.
Yeah, coming in as the massive underdog in this series, doing everything he can to try to bring it back. On the right side of Dash and Terminal, we have Jon Snow.
And on the edge of making it into Premier League, once again, surprising no one, it is CM Storm's Pult. Pult. He's a very nice guy. Very, very relaxed, very good English.
He's a pretty chill dude. If there's one thing that Pult is known for, it's that he very rarely, he has his weaknesses against other Korean players for sure, but he very rarely loses to non-Korean players. He's, Hydra, I guess, has kind of been the king of that this year. Basically just dropping that series tomorrow in the round of 32 of last season, but immediately bouncing back from that. And it still remains to be seen, where Pult's biggest weaknesses are, because they usually are exploited and shown to us by other Korean players. So I don't see a lot of sort of reference material for Jon Snow outside of that series that Kane played versus him months ago, and he already tried that sort of style, and it just didn't work out for him.
No, not at all. I think that with this, Jon Snow came into the game, he's thinking, I just have to do my best. I've got builds. I know TVZ as best as I can. I'm just going to play it. And as we've seen, Polt has just come out in the upper hand. It's not really come down to anything special except just playing a straightforward TVZ kind of game.
Yeah, and that's really all you can ask of him. Jon Snow is going to open up with a quick spawning pool. This is not any sort of cheese. The reason why he's doing this is, if we take a look at the distance between the main bases, it's very, very short. If Polt decides to open up with a quick Reaper, which, by the way, he's opening up with a quick Reaper, then he has the opportunity to get in and deal a lot of damage, because that is a cliff from the main base on the right side of Polt's base. He can jump straight down, run across the gold base areas, and then jump right into the main of Jon Snow very, very easily, as we can see. You know, it's a very quick hop, skip, and a jump over. And I'll tell you what, on ladder, I've had a lot of fun making Zergs who don't veto this map cry.
Yeah, Reaper Harass is very annoying to deal with as a Zerg. As you were pointing out, there are multiple entries into the base, and it would be exciting to see Polt deviate a little bit from the standard build he's been going for. Maybe get one more Reaper after this. This one's going to finish soon. We do see the command center coming down, so as of right now, everything's standard. And note, Polt is not going to go anywhere else that we don't expect him to go. He's got the reactor coming down. Hellions will be soon to follow. And I think from Jon Snow, what we can hope for is that he's going to take advantage of the very exposed natural base.
Yeah, that's all you can really hope to do as a Zerg player. But, you know, he didn't even open up with a fast gas in this game, so he finds himself very far away from having anything like Ling speed. And that makes me wonder, you know, is he going to actually go for that Ling speed opener once again? Maybe we're going to see him finally throw a little bit of cheddar into the equation, go for something like a quick, I don't know, Roach or Bane bust or something like that, because it would take a lot of wall for Polt to defend his and close off his natural.
Yeah, you have multiple angles. You can get a good wraparound on the workers, not allow them to escape. That would definitely put Jon Snow in a great position. Polt being safe, though, building his expansion on the high ground, not trying to take any risk with this game, and just continuing to truck on. He's going to get ready. He's going to float over the factory onto the barracks. He's going to start, or onto the reactor. He's going to start pumping out Hellions, and he's going to build a starport. I'm curious. We saw it both games in a row. He canceled the Banshee, changed his mind on it. I wonder if we're going to see him, with the close air spawn, change his mind on that this time and go for it.
I think if you want to beat somebody that you're clearly better than, taking a slightly safe route is never a bad idea. Because what it does is it allows Polt to say, I will not lose to any build order counters. It's not possible. You know, unless he went for hatch, gas, pool, crazy fast lair, then there's no way that Jon Snow could have mutas out fast enough to make Banshees a bad move. And the fact that Polt is willing to even cancel the Banshee just shows that that's how comfortable he feels. He doesn't mind delaying his own tech just to know 100% that he will not die to anything cheesy. So just for that reason alone, you know, those are the things that make Polt a champion. That's what make him so good. That's why he has so many fans. That's why everybody loves Polt.
Yeah.
He's just so damn good at everything.
Yeah, and this time he is going to go for the Banshee, possibly. He floats the starport on top of the tech lab. And there it is, the Banshee's on its way, and Cloak, so we'll see if it decides to go with it. Bring the Reaper back in, trying to get a scout. Doesn't see, every other time the Reaper has scouted, it has seen a pretty quick lair. We're not seeing the lair this time. It checks the natural, make sure he's not trying to hide it.
Yeah, he saw the gas timing, right? So he knew that it was a bit later than usual. It is still straight into a lair, but all things said and done, relative to any normal fast Spire build, this is a late lair. And because of that, Polt has a big opportunity to make something happen with the Banshees. He has a big opportunity to make something happen with that Lings, or excuse me, with the Hellions and the Reaper, to try and find an opening where he can get some damage done. It's a very realistic possibility for him at the moment, and we have to consider that Dash and Terminal has such a short air rush distance that Banshee can get to that base very quickly, way before Spire is done.
Absolutely. We do have Spore Crawlers coming on the way for Jon Snow to get some defense up for that. There are 3 Queens, so 3 Queens of Spore Crawler. I mean, that's going to be good for defending the natural. He's starting to spread that creep, and these Hellions just continuing to posture outside of the creep line. We have the first Banshee on the way. Cloak is 75% of the way done. Second Banshee is coming down, so he's not getting too aggressive with it. I think he's just going to wait, possibly throw down a few more units, and maybe just do a big push with the stim.
I think that's the ideal move. You know, there's no reason for Polt to make himself vulnerable with being greedy when it comes to something like upgrades or a third command center. By doing what he's doing, he is safe against any push that Jon Snow could possibly make. Baneley nests are nice. Maybe if Polt overextends and a counterattack happens again, sure. But in this position, by going for all these barracks so quickly, Polt is just going to have an insane amount of production that you otherwise normally wouldn't be able to get in Terran versus Zerg.
Yeah, so Polt still hasn't seen the Spire yet. There's an Overseer out. There are still the Queens, so the Banshees aren't going to have free reign.
And the Banshee tried to do something, I mean, but it's tricky. It's not easy. But the first two medevacs will be starting very soon, and Stim is close to completing. That's going to be where Polt once again tries to build up that game-winning momentum. Because, you know, the Hellions are going to trade against these Queens. That choke point is pretty light. I do like that the Banelings and Lings are kept behind. Whoa, okay. The Banshees force these drones to pull away as the Spore Crawler. There's no Spore Crawler in position at the natural. It's actually baiting these Queens pretty nicely now that I think about it.
Yeah, pulling them around. They're not sitting around distracting them from doing injects, different things like that. The drones forced, you know, missed mining time. That's not good for, not a good position for Jon Snow to be in.
I mean, these Banshees come up towards this mineral line, and they're still getting into a good spot, picking up a few more drones. And this is exactly what Polt wants to do with these Banshees, especially since mutas are on the way. These Banshees will have pretty much no more utility in the next 30 seconds. When the mutas come out, the Banshees are either going to be guaranteed to be dead, or they'll die as soon as they come back. Some Hellions did run by to the third base of Jon Snow, and they actually killed a few more drones as well.
Yeah, so 15 drones total have gone down. I mean, for that bunch of Hellions and 2 Banshees, would you say that's worth it, Nate?
Oh, yeah. You know, that's not... Those units are not in any way, shape, or form related to the core composition that Polt wants to go for. When you're a Terran player, you're thinking about basically just Marines, and everything else is a complement to the Marines and the medevacs. And the Widow Mines are more than suitable. They're Polt's weapon of choice from the majority of games that we've seen him play over the course of the last few years here in the World Championship Series. So I'm not surprised. You throw away the Hellions. You throw away the Hellions because you know that your opponent only has so much they can do. And actually, we have those drones. Where are they going? Is he just going to try to take the gold? Okay, no, they're going home. Okay, that made me nervous.
Yeah, that was a little crazy. They were out on the map. These Mutalisks, the Banshees are all out. They're not cloaked. They're able to get taken down.
Yeah, Polt's going to start to push in now. He's got a couple Widow Mines, got a lot of Marines. I mean, if he focuses down what few Banelings there are, he should find himself in a pretty good spot to continue to deal critical damage to Jon Snow. And the mutas are actually pulled out of position by the Banshees too, and I think the Banshees have actually survived because of that reason alone. He's going to clean up all the links, step back, load up into these, and whoop! Almost. Widow Mine's dealing a lot of damage.
Yeah, so Jon Snow does see it. He's able to bait them out and then get rid of them. Took out a few of the Marines, but they were able to pull up, and I think that was, once again, 6 drones went down for Jon Snow. Polt's in a great position. He's got his third base coming up. Is that actually a planetary fortress? No, that's an orbital command.
So he's, at this point, just continuing to push in with these Marines. The Banshees are still alive in the northeast. The only thing that Jon Snow has going for him is that he's been blocking that third base for quite some time with the creep spread from that Overlord. Now, Polt's not even thinking about his third base right now. I think Polt, he started to ramp it up a little bit relative to the last 2 games, and he's saying, okay, I know I'm in a game-winning position. I'm pretty sure if I just don't make too many big mistakes, I should be able to just move in right now and kill it and just get this quick 3-0 that I was looking for.
Yeah, Polt is spreading hate and discontent in the natural of Jon Snow, killing drones, killing workers. He does get the Widow Mines down to protect the avenue of approach for those Marines, but here come the Banelings in. He's splitting already, taking them down, focus firing very nicely, and Polt doing a great job dealing damage to Jon Snow.
Yeah, Polt just doing what Polt does best. He's just microing like a king and continuing to push forward without any Banelings, without a good number of Banelings at least. Really tough for Jon Snow to win. GG's called. Polt takes the 3-0, and he will be back in Premier League once again to, I mean, no surprise, I'd say here, Polt has just been a top contender in almost like every tournament that he's ever played in, really.
Yeah, no, it was like each game is one member of the Night's Watch giving a shiv to Jon Snow, and that last one was Ollie saying for the watch.
I'm glad that I don't understand any of those references, but Polt will advance on to Premier. He will be joining Kane so far from today's matches, and that's those match results not too surprising. You know, Jon Snow comes in. He was probably one of the lowest seeded players that we could have had, and he got picked quickly by Polt. As Polt said in his own tweet, for the watch. So, not surprising to be able to see Polt take that victory. We do have 2 more best of 5s to bring you guys, though, today, as we find out who will be running out Challenger for North America as we get ready for the Season 3 Premier League for the World Championship Series. Our next best of 5, I believe, will be QXC versus Violet, another Terran versus Zerg. 2 very different players, much closer matchup. We'll get to that best of 5 right after this commercial break.